Good evening. Good evening. Daryl, thank you for that reading. Yeah, I thought, this morning whenever Bible class, I wasn't sure exactly where we was at there in chapter 10, and I didn't think it really maybe was going to get down that far. But I'm glad that he did. Because that was what I wanted, in my thoughts of what I wanted to talk about was our assembling together and how it draws us near to God. So that's actually the title of what I want to talk about, is drawing near to God. And so, and that went hand in hand with what I had been thinking about this week, was over in Hebrews chapter 10. And my thoughts was, when we neglect our assembling together, wherever it may be, I know that, and I appreciate all the good remarks that and the comments that I heard this morning from different ones when we talked about this, and because it's important that when we have the opportunity to assemble, that we're here. And I know, whether it's Lord's Day worship or Wednesday evening service, it may be such a thing. It's a gospel meeting and a Friday night sing, VBS, and I could go on. But when those opportunities present themselves, we need to, and I know there's times that we can't, but every opportunity that we can be together, that we can come together, that we can assemble together, it draws us near to God. And we need that. We need that. In James 4:8, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And so, where am I going to go here is, and I picked Psalms, the 73rd chapter of Psalms. Now I want you go ahead and turn over there if you would. And I'm hoping that this will kind of help illustrate what I'm talking about. And, sometimes I think we question, well, do I need to be at every assembly? How important is that I'm here every Lord's Day? Is it really that important? Can I worship God in my own little place? Maybe separate and apart from the church? Why can't I do that? How close do I really need to be to God? I think there's a lot of danger in isolation. And what I mean is to isolate ourselves from the brethren. I think we need that being together, that Christian fellowship. And if we're not careful, the world will draw us away. So there's a danger involved. If we're not careful, the world will draw us away. Now I wanted to think about that. And over here in the 73rd chapter of Psalms, I broke it into two parts here. And the first part is a spiritual illness. And the second part is a recovery. And I'm going to read here in just a minute, verses 1 through 16, and I got a few words to say about it, and then we'll finish up with the rest of the chapter. But I want to think about spiritual illness. When you think about any kind of an illness, even physical illness, when we're sick, we think about a recovery, don't we? Maybe we got the flu or whatever. We want a quick recovery. Maybe it's such thing that we're in the hospital. Maybe it's an operation, some type of surgery. Our hopes is for a quick recovery. But we know sometimes that's not always the case, is it? Sometimes even death. Well, in the spiritual illness, the same thing. Sometimes I think, and here we're going to see this with the psalmist here, sometimes we can get maybe drawn away, but we will realize, hopefully by being a Christian, that that's not where I want to go, and we can get back. We can recover, hopefully quickly. But sometimes there is no recovery. Sometimes we might get drawn away and not come back. Spiritual death. And so that's what we want to be aware of. And again, the reason I had picked Hebrews for our text, chapter 10 there, is we don't want to neglect our assembling together. Because again, that's where we draw near to God. And we need to draw near to God. We need that strength. So anyway, let me read here the first 16 verses. I want to make some comments on this. It begins out here in verse 1. Truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no bands in their death, but there is strength. Their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence covered them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They move more than heart could wish. Or they have more than a heart can wish. You've got to bear with me here. I don't see real good. but in verse 8, they are corrupt and speak wickedness concerning oppression. They speak lawfully. They set their mouths against the heavens, and their tongues walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And they say, how doth God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly, who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. Verily I have cleansed my heart in vain, and washed my hands in innocency. For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. If I say, I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. You see here in verse 2, he said, my feet was almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. Have you ever been, I think all of us have, on a slippery slope? It's hard to get our traction, hard to get our footing. I think maybe he felt like this was where he was at. You see, just maybe, his absence from the Lord's house and maybe his constant association with the world, with the sinful, the wicked, had nearly destroyed his proper perspective of God. That's what we have to be careful with. See, what the psalmist was saying, and I'm going to kind of put this in my own words here. What he is saying was there was a time that I actually began to wonder. I began to wonder about my stance as a Christian, my faith, and it became wobbly. My faith, it just almost took a tumble. You see, I think what he was saying and what he was thinking is, I looked out there and I was out there and I seen maybe just how well off I thought these wicked were. I thought they had it made. You see, everything looked good. Everything was going their way. And these were those who were ungodly. These were those that didn't have an interest in the church. And he became envious of the prosperity of the wicked. Not only were they not punished in life, but even in death, pain was absent. And I think the further maybe he went, the better things looked. They didn't suffer as other men. Their eyes stood out as in fatness. And despite their corruption, they prospered, you see. And while the psalmist trying to live a good life, he was rewarded with plague and chastened. You know, others have also made the same kind of observation as the psalmist did. I think about Job over in Job chapter 27, when Job had seen and he had wondered about the prosperity of the wicked, didn't he? And the people of Malachi's day had observed the prosperity of the wicked. And you know, there's nothing new. Things ain't changed that much, have they? You and me, we're not exempt, are we? We're not exempt. Because sometimes I think we often, if we're not careful, we'll often consider the luxuries of others, the wealth of others. You know, sometimes that, and all of us have friends and maybe even family, and those who really have nothing to do with God. I noticed there at the house, the golf course, even as cold as it was this morning, here's those regulars come in every Sunday morning. There to play golf. I'm sure the last thing on their mind is worship the Lord's Day. A lot of times we have friends, especially young people, and they make plans for the weekend. Maybe on Saturday, a lot of people, Saturday night, it makes no difference if we're up all night. We're not planning to go anywhere Sunday. We can sleep all day if we want to. And you know, it's tempting sometimes, isn't it? We're tempted to be drawn into that. Boy, they're having fun. Boy, everything is going good for them. And sometimes maybe if we're not careful, we might just begin to wonder, is serving God really worth the cost? I think the psalmist here, I think that's what he began to think. He began to think, what good is it done me to be decent, to be honest, to live a respectable life? All the time that I've spent studying, all the hours I've spent studying, all the time in prayer. And I think maybe he began to wonder about life. in his faith, was it really worth the cost? You see, that's the reason that is so important for us as Christians to assemble and not to neglect, to be here every time that it is possible to be here, that we draw near to God. We need to draw near to God. And now, the second half, we're going to see a recovery. We're going to see a good thing here. There in 17, we read the rest of the chapter. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I their end. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou cast them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation? As in a moment, they are utterly consumed with terrors. As a dream when one awaketh, so, O Lord, when thou awaketh, thou shalt despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins. So foolish was I, and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee. Nevertheless, I am continually with thee. Thou hast held me by my right hand. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire besides thee. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all them that go whoring from thee. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I have put my trust in the Lord God, that I may declare all thy works. You see, the psalmist here had come real close, you see, to apostasy, hadn't he? He'd come real close to falling away because of maybe that continual association with the world, with the wicked, the sinful. And because he was, you think, maybe learning to think as they thought. That's what happens, isn't it? When we're drawn away. But when he went into the sanctuary of God, he regained his perspective. See, it helped him to understand their end. It renewed his strength because he learned that God was continually with him. You see, he went into the sanctuary of God. And you see, again, he had been complaining, hadn't he? Oh, he had been complaining to the Lord about the sinful and the wicked of this life. And he'd thought that they'd really had it made. He thought that they were living the good life. And you know, probably he might have been thinking that he was missing out on something. That's how it usually goes, isn't it? But then he said, I thought about their end. I thought about maybe what's going to happen if they don't change. What if I go there and don't come back? What about my end? See, I think sometimes we lose focus, don't we? We lose focus when we're not near to God. When we're not near to God, we'll lose focus. That's the reason it's important that we draw near to God. Know how foolish he felt. How ignorant he said he was. And in spite of all my ignorance, the Lord had not forsaken him, had he? The Lord had not forsaken him. You know, God doesn't leave us, does he? He doesn't leave us. We leave him. We leave him. He said, you are continually with me. Thou hast held me by my right hand. You see, just like a father and a child holding on to his hand. He saw that there was none, either in heaven or on earth, that compared to God. He saw that the ultimate end of the wicked was destruction, regardless of how much they might have prospered in this temporary world. He saw how important it was to draw near to God. And surely I think we can see the importance of Christian assembly. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33. Evil companions corrupt good morals. I know we've all heard that. Been quoted many times, and I think about that. Because I know with most of us, or so many of us, maybe with our jobs, maybe school, but you know, also TV. We're exposed to vulgar language, profanity, adultery, dishonesty. And we need to be careful, because if we're not careful and we're around it enough, it just seems like it becomes common and maybe an acceptable way of life. And that's the way they want to present it, isn't it? That's what Satan wants us to think. It's just an acceptable way of life. So we need to be careful that we're not drawn away into this. And that's the reason it's so important that we do not neglect the assembly. I think about each Lord's Day when we come together. The prayers, the singing, our communion, our teaching, our preaching, and our giving. And how it draws us near to God. It draws us near to God. I want to read just one verse Brother Darrell read there a few minutes ago. Verse 25 and verse 10 of Hebrews. Not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching. We see things differently in the sanctuary of God, as did the psalmist. In verse 3, he said, I was envious when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Verse 17, until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood. Therein. You see, in the church, in the study of God's Word and in our fellowship one with another, we're drawn close to God. I hope that this lesson will help us. I hope that it will help us to understand how important it is to draw near to God, and how important it is to attend every opportunity that we possibly can. I know there's times that we cannot. There's things that come up, and I understand that. But sometimes, if we're not careful, we'll let others persuade us, maybe to do something else, to make other plans, and we need to be careful. We need to put God first. Assembling with our brethren, that we can be near to God. You know, one of the greatest privileges as a Christian is just that, being near to God. And the peace and of mind that we have. That we can lay our heads down at night. And if there is no tomorrow, that's all right. We got that eternal home where we're going. If you're here tonight and you've never took that step, you've never been baptized of forgiveness of sins, maybe you have. And maybe you've been drawn away. You need to come back. That you can draw near to God. There's no better peace in life than to have God. Know God's with you, by your side. Help us through whatever we face. Or maybe you just need the prayers of the church. Whatever it is, whatever it may be, if we can help, won't you please come? Or we stand and we sing the invitation song.